I met him, maybe a couple years ago, I said to him, and he will remember it, everybody I mention when they meet you says that they like you. I've never met anybody. He smiled. But he happens to be unique. And a guy with an enormous possibility, I know. I'm here. 2 reasons. One, two, for me, it's a matter of security of the state.
You know, for Israel, that volunteer giving the peace process. I think that's unrealistic.
You saw that the other day. Someone in the administration put out a story that they're upset at Cory Booker that if they win, they're not going to consider him for a cabinet appointment. It was a funny story. Wow. You can't be angry at Bill Clinton. He's Bill Clinton. You can pick up Cory Booker then.
Good morning. I want to thank you all for coming out here today. We're standing here in front of the Jewish Heritage Living Memorial to the Holocaust. A very appropriate place to hold a press conference in relation to my colleague, City Councilman Charles Barron. I want to first recognize several elected officials. We're very privileged to have everyone's favorite mayor, Mayor Ed Koch, who's here with us today. Our Congressman, United States Congressman Jerry Nadler, Assemblyman Joe Pikin, Assemblywoman Helene Weinstein, Assemblyman Steve Simmerwitz, Council Member Mike Nelson, and many community leaders who have joined us today. You know, those of us who are here, both as elected officials and community leaders, we don't agree on everything, but I think we all agree that Charles Barron is a hate monger. This is an individual who doesn't actually believe the Jews are Jewish. This is true. I want to repeat that. He does not actually believe the Jews are Jewish. He does not believe there should be a state of Israel. He doesn't believe there's anything wrong with palling around with his friends who are dictators. He's actually said very clearly that Israel is the #1 terrorist state in the world. Imagine that, a state that actually tries to combat terrorism every day, according to him, is the #1 terrorist state. He's compared Israel to the Nazis, and he counts as his friends 2 of the top dictators, historic dictators. If you look at any top dictator list, you will find Robert Mugabe and the late Omar Gaddafi are on that list. This is a man who actually hosted Mugabe here in New York City, and in fact said that Omar Gaddafi was a freedom fighter. This is an individual, unfortunately, who really is somebody who's a hate monger. He's an anti-Semite, he's anti-Jewish, he's anti-white. Very famously, of course, said that nothing would give him greater pleasure than walking down the street and slapping the first white guy that he saw. I just want to be very clear about one thing. I know Charles Barron pretty well. He's my colleague in the City Council. A lot of people like to dismiss it and say, oh, he's crazy. No, Charles Barron is not crazy. Charles Barron is a very intelligent man. He's somebody who understands exactly what he's doing, and when he goes out there, when he makes anti-Semitic and racist and incendiary remarks, he does so intentionally with a very specific, hateful agenda. And so we're here today to condemn him. We're here to make it clear that this is not an individual who, in my opinion, is fit to hold any office in this land, including the current office that he holds, much less to be a United States congressman, and much less to be somebody who can get out there. And if Charles is elected, I believe that he will be the most prominent anti-Semite in the United States of America. And that's why we're all here united together today. And so first, I'd like to call on our congressmen both in Brooklyn and here in Manhattan as well, Congressman Jerry Nadler.
Thank you very much, Councilman. We have a very important congressional race going on to be decided on June 26th between Hakeem Jeffries, who is an intelligent, constructive, accomplished member of the State Assembly, who has passed constructive legislation who has united people around the common agenda. He doesn't divide people and doesn't spew hateful rhetoric. Against him is Charles Barron. Everything that David said, Councilman Greenfield said, unfortunately is accurate. Just looking at some of the quotes he has said, Gaza is a virtual death camp, the same kind of conditions Nazis imposed on the Jews. Unquote. What shameful, disgusting rhetoric to compare Israel to the Nazis. Anyone who does that has no basis in civilized, has no right almost to be in civilized society, never mind Congress. To say that the Israelis massacre the Palestinian people, what this amounts to is genocide. Genocide? Charles Barron is the most anti-Israel person that I know of in public life. He is the most outrageous comments. His presence in Congress would be poisonous to rational discourse, to any chance of making progress on Middle East peace or advancing intelligent policy. It would be poisonous to relations between different groups in the city and the state, this country. Short of some of other people who have made similar comments, who mostly in groups that wear white hoods. He is about the most destructive person I know of in public life, and we're here to say that he must not be elected to Congress, and that people who live in that new congressional district, my current constituents who live in Brighton Beach and Coney Island and Seagate, hopefully will come out in great numbers to vote against Charles Barron and for Hakeem Jeffries. The choice could not be clearer. The civic duty of saving the city, the state, and the country from this kind of anti-Semitic, disgusting demagoguery.
Thank you, Congressman. I think the Congressman just has a terrific point, which we need to repeat, which is why, one of the reasons why we're here today. The congressional districts have changed. The people in these neighborhoods, Marine Park, the Mill Basin, Coney Island, and Brighton Beach, these are individuals who don't even necessarily realize that right now, that coming up in just a few weeks, they will have a new congressman. And unfortunately, one of those candidates, this is why we're here today, we have to be crystal clear. Charles Barron, he's an anti-Semite, he's a racist, he's a bigot of the highest order. We need people to understand that. And I'd like to now ask somebody who, of course, has spent his life fighting anti-Semitism, Senator Joe Biden, to please address us.
Okay, I think it's been made very, very clear that Charles Barron is an anti-Semite, he's a racist, and he does not belong to the United States Congress. You know, this is not about political right and the political left, us having different points of view. This is about what's right and what's off the charts. Charles Barron is off the charts. Charles Barron is a person who, and the record is there, this is not us revealing something new to you. The record is there. He loves dictators. He misses Gaddafi. At night, he dreams about Gaddafi. Even right now, he misses Gaddafi. He brought Mugabe to New York. These individuals are responsible for torturing their civilians. These are people who killed hundreds and thousands of their own people. I can only imagine what he thinks of Assad of Syria, who has murdered 12,000 of his own people. He thinks probably Assad is a great hero. He probably thinks that Assad is a civil rights leader. This is a guy who, when it comes to Israel, it's not about having a different point of view. It literally is about a person who has said the state of Israel should not exist, period. You know, this is a guy who thinks Hamas is a civil rights organization. This terrorist organization that exists right now that won't even recognize the state of Israel under any borders. These are his buddies and these are his friends. This great candidate. I mean, I think you know that, I can support a Democrat, I can support a Republican. This is about doing the right thing. You got an amazing candidate in Hakeem, and Hakeem and I have our disagreements, but this guy is an unbelievable candidate. And to think that we could wake up in the morning, and we could wake up in the morning and find Charles Barron with his hate mongering, as David said, on the floor of the United States Congress. You know, one thing about Charles Barron, he's an equal opportunity hater. Thank God it's not just the Jews and it's not just Israel. He hates white people as well. He's got a problem with white people as well. My real complaint with Charlie Barron, to be honest with you today, will the real Charlie Barron please stand up and stop pretending? You know, I can't stand what Charles Barron is all about, but the last 2 or 3 weeks, he's not being honest with the people of his district. He's a different person. What are the people of his district to expect? Is it the old Charles Barron, the hate monger, all his life? Or is it the guy who was taking political direction the last 2 or 3 weeks? He sounds like some kind of moderate. He sounds like, hey, you know, a nice guy. We need to look at Charles Barron's record. That record is filled with hate. That record is filled with divisiveness. We don't need that in New York. We don't need that in the United States Congress. We can have our differences, that's fine. But we don't need a Charles Barron in the United States Congress. And of the people of this community, all people of this community, black and white and everything else, if they do not vote, you will wake up with Charles Barron in the United States Congress. And I say, God forbid. This is not just about a candidate. This is about right and wrong, as far as I'm concerned. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Assemblyman Heiken. You know, I think that those of us in government, when we look to leaders, when we think of integrity and good government and fairness, we think of Mayor Ed Koch. So I'd like to ask Mayor Ed Koch to please address us.
This museum, the Holocaust Museum, behind us, I initiated. So I'm very proud to be here and to see it. But in a way, it makes it easier to try to convey the message. What's the message? The city of New York is an extraordinary city. We have sons and daughters of every race in the world. West, blacks, Hispanics, Jews, Italians, Poles, every nation in the world is represented here. And we've learned to live together. It's extraordinary. We are a model for the country. But in every wonderful place, there is a viper. This is a viper. Charles Barron. Now, I know Charles. And what is so interesting about him is that he can be very charming. So innocent. The fact is that what he has said in the past is so vile and vicious, assailing and assaulting Israeli Jews, supporters of Israel, that it's simply not acceptable. Now, the problem is that we're in an unusual election year, and so many people don't know who represents them or who is running, or when the election is. And there will regrettably not be as high a turnout as is normally the case. And that's what's worrisome, because you can be sure that the people who know Barron, support him, they'll get there. They're vicious, just like him. And the people who, if they knew him for what he is, would rush to them. They do not know election. And that's why, basically, they're saying, he's having this. He's no good. I can tell you, because I know him. Now, Hakeem Jeffries is a unique guy. He's a star. I met him a couple of years ago. those who hear our message know that we've got other things to do today, but it was so important to come down and give this message like there's an election coming, there's a choice to be made. We're urging you to stand up, rush to the polls, vote for Barron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to ask the chair of the Jewish Caucus in the New York City Council, Councilmember Mike Nelson, to address us. I'd also like to thank his Jewish advisor, family, who helped us coordinate the event.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Councilman Greenfield. My colleagues have stated most of, if not all, of the facts and the case presented why we cannot have Charles Barron in the United States Congress. I would add only that if he were asked to retract any of his statements in the past, I believe he would not. And that's part of the tragedy of what Charles has said in the past, and that's part of the problem. And the solution to this before the United States, I believe, would be disgraced by having a congressman such as Charles Barron, would be to ensure that he's not voted into the House of Representatives.
Thank you, Councilman. Assemblyman Steve Simrowitz has long been an advocate and a proponent and someone who really focuses on Holocaust remembrance and has done a lot of work to that end in his role as a legislator in Albany and working in Brooklyn. We'd like to ask him to address us.
Thank you, Councilman. Quite appropriate to be standing in front of the Holocaust Museum. As a second-generation Holocaust survivor, whose parents, God bless them, are 90 and 89 years old, survived the Holocaust. What Councilman Barron is saying is that what my parents went through in the ghetto and the slave labor camp did not occur. He's saying that the Holocaust did not occur and that my family were killed in the Holocaust, were not killed by the Nazis. That is outrageous. It's outrageous for anyone, especially an American, especially an elected official, to deny these events. He is someone who hates. He is someone who is a disgrace to all elected officials. And I'm urging all my constituents, because the 45th Assembly District is within the Congressional District, I am urging my constituents to come out and make sure that Charles Barron is not elected to the House of Representatives. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a lot of community leaders from different neighborhoods of the community, but first I want to get to somebody who has been in Albany for really more time than anyone cares to admit, and really has been a leader there as the chair of the Judiciary Committee. She's somebody who has been a stalwart fighting anti-Semitism, and really, in fact, if you want to talk about a legislator who has proven the model of bridging the gap between African American and Jewish communities, nobody's actually done this with a more diverse community than Assemblymember Helene Weiss.
Thank you, David. And one of the things I wanted to say, obviously I agree with all of the statements that have been made, but the importance of getting the truth out about Charles Barron is not just an importance for the Jewish community, the Russian-speaking community, many of whom are in this district. It's a message also for the African American and Caribbean communities, because there is a lack of knowledge in some of those communities of the hateful things that Charles Barron has said and that he stands for. And I think that all right-thinking people, regardless of their ethnic or racial background, should stand up and repudiate Charles Barron in this congressional race. It's unfortunate that a lot of people are not aware of his statements, are not aware of his hateful statements, are not aware of his anti-Semitic statements. And I call upon all people in the district, those that I represent in the southern part of the district and those that I represent in the Flatlands and Canarsie sections of the district, to stand up for truth and for right and to repudiate hate in this coming election.
Thank you, Assembly order. We're going to ask very briefly a few community leaders to speak. We're going to first start with Leon Goldberg, who is leader of many different organizations, including council organizations.
I'm not going to reiterate who Charles Barron is. I think everybody said it, everybody by now knows. I am supporting Hakeem Jeffries on a positive basis. But what people have to realize is that this election is going to be decided 30 to 35,000 people. That's all you're going to have coming out. So every vote becomes critical. Therefore, I'm asking everybody to recognize that there is a tremendous space for Charles Barron in this district, and do not come out to vote in large numbers. We will have Charles Barron, as I would like to say, as our congressman. Although I am not the district, he will not be our congressman. That is a fact. He will be in the U.S. Congress, but he will not be representing the district. He will not be doing the job that a congressman shall. He will only be spewing hatred as he has done until now. So I ask everybody that is in the district, 2 weeks from now, come out and vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask Constable Bennett, who is a renowned community activist.
Morning. Yesterday's Daily News editorial strongly endorsing Hakeem Jeffries said the most stark statement for this election. 1, Hakeem Jeffries is a class act, and 1, Charles Barron is a malignant clown. The elected officials have spoken. The people now have to speak. I urge all of our friends and those who are like-minded in seeing New York City move forward. I grew up in a New York City that was far different and is far different than we have today. Our friends in Mill Basin, our friends in Manhattan Beach, our friends in Coney Island, Marine Park, Seagate, and yes, our friends in Brownville, East New York, Clinton Hill, Williamsburg, Crown Heights. We are all one. We want to see New York City move forward together in a peaceful way. Charles Barron represents everything that is wrong with our society. As the elected official said, I strongly urge us, the voters, those of us on the street in those districts, make sure you vote on June 26th for Hakeem Jeffries. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Ellie Cohen, the representative of the Bobbitt community, to
And of course, within Crown Heights is a very central place in Brooklyn, and it's a community which is a very diverse community. Hakeem Jeffries has been representing a portion of the district in the state legislature in Albany. Has done a wonderful job there, and although, as has been said, you don't agree with everybody on every issue, but the main issue that's here is to maintain a unified community. And someone who's going to divide the community is someone that we don't need to see. And someone who can work to bring people together, like Hakeem Jeffries, is somebody that we need to see. And therefore, we are putting all our voice behind the people of the district that's where the election's taking place, and we're asking people, don't elect Barron, make sure he doesn't get to Congress, and make sure to come out and vote for Hakeem Jeffries.
Thank you. I would like to ask
Thank you, Councilman. There's not really much to add. I wanted to say what Mayor Koch pointed out earlier, that Charles Barron is a very charming person. I know him a long time. He is very charming, but we can't get fooled by this type of charm. Speakers have all said very clearly, it's a very stark choice in this election. This is really the most important election we've seen in many, many years, but there's such a choice. It's not a few issues that disagree on this day. Clearly, two sides of the issue are right and the wrong side. We have to come out and stay on the right side and not vote for the wrong side. Thank you.
Very quickly, Zev Redder, CEO of Online Communications, largest Jewish network in the United States.
Thank you. As somebody who's interviewed Charles Barron, and people have said to me, how could somebody not be embarrassed about saying these terrible things, that we're not real Jews, that Israelis are mowing down Palestinians, and things of that nature. And in fact, I've caught him. He knows it's not true, but he says it's for his own political benefit. And that's the most dangerous kind of individual who espouses hatred, racism, anti-Semitism to really go ahead in politics. And we have to send a clear message on June 26th that such racism and anti-Semitism has no place in Brooklyn, no place in New York, no place in the United States.
Thank you. I am Deutsch, leader of Flavia Showroom.
I just want to say that this is not just another press conference. This is is a press conference. This is serious. When Charles tells you that there's a scary monster, we all know that there's no such things as scary monsters. But ladies and gentlemen, today we have a scary monster. And we have to make sure, send a message out June 26th, that we must eliminate this monster from the rest of this country. So please make sure you vote on the vote.
Thank you.
I worked with Charles Barron when I was in the city council, and I see firsthand the outrageous comments that he's made and his incredibly ridiculous behavior. I would be here regardless of whether or not there was a candidate who was running against Charles Barron, but it happens to be we're fortunate enough to have Hakeem Jeffries, who is a really stand-up individual, and he's a great person, and we should all make sure to go out and show that we don't condone hatred and vote for Hakeem Jeffries on June 26th. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Obviously, Spitzer, the Sephardic Community Federation.
I can't add much more other than to say I met Hakeem Jeffries recently, and a real class act, a real professional. I'll be honored to have him serve as my congressman in Marine Parks. And Charles Barron, his reputation speaks for itself. So Hakeem Jeffries.
Thank you all for coming. Any questions that you might have? We're happy to take your questions.
I wonder what prompts you to do this now in particular, and specifically, are you surprised at the level of support you might be getting in the country now, where, given this track record?
No. What prompts us to do this is simply the fact that, as Mayor Koch said, this is a very unusual election. There's nothing else on the ballot other than Congress. We're expecting all over an extremely light turnout because, state legislatures normally have an election, and there's a contested election for state assembly, state senate, Congress, something, state committee, whatever. Here, all of those elections are in September, first time ever, where you have only a congressional election, and the result is that most people will not come out to vote. Here, we're concerned that when you have a demagogue like Charles Barron, he's got his little group, they will come out to vote because they're his group, and everybody else, they just, very few may come out to vote. So we're here to warn people that this is a very important election, that there is an election on June 26th, that people who may live in my district and say, oh, Jerry's not running, but someone is running because it's no longer going to be my district. Now it's going to be Hakeem Jeffries or Charles Barron. You've got to come out and vote when you might otherwise not realize it. And that's our purpose now. We're not here to say that we particularly see a great outswelling of support, God forbid, for Charles Barron, but he's got his group. They will vote. And we have to make sure that the majority of the people in the district know there's an election and know what's at stake.
Yeah, I would just add that what prompted me, along with what the Congressman was saying, is that people, speaking of people that are not familiar with Charles' record, they just don't know who Charles Barron is. That's a very scary thing, right? Anytime you have a conversation, people are not familiar that there's an individual who's running, who we all know very well, who is an anti-Semite, who's a hate monger, and who's a bigot. I think it's very important for us to educate the public and let them know who this individual is.
Furthermore, the fact that Ed Townsend endorsed it, I didn't give everybody the benefit. The fact that Ed Townsend endorsed it shows us that Ed Townsend has his ear to the ground. He's a district leader and really knows what's going on. Realizes, recognizes that with his votes, kids don't know that Charles Barron will probably be elected the next Congressman. I think that's something that people do not realize. And I don't say that Ed Townsend will carry 20,000 votes, but if he carries 2,000 or 3,000 votes on Charles Barron's side, that will make a difference. And Charles Barron will become the next U.S. Congressman. I don't know who will be represented there, but he will become the next Congressman. And Ed Townsend will be a tremendous service to our community. We supported him for all 30 years that he was my Congressman. Going over to Charles Barron, who is a hate monger.
Yeah, one thing. We usually have elections in this country, in this city, where the differences are differences of degree. You like this one better than that one, this one is more effective, this one is a little more liberal, that one is a little more conservative. And sometimes there's real rhetoric about this one is terrible. Usually that's not true. Usually that's not true. People have learned to discount that kind of rhetoric. This time it is true. We got a reasonable candidate and a disgraceful, dangerous candidate. That is very rare. We have to make sure that people understand it.
Is there anything else other than this press conference to get out and vote?
The answer is of course. Every effort will be made. I think if the electorate is educated about who Charles Barron is, Charles Barron will lose, and it won't be close. So that is really the objective over the coming weeks, just to tell everyone what the facts are in his own words, in his own image. As we say about Ed Towns, who for 30 years has been a friend, I just want to point out that 4 years ago, we stood with Ed Towns. He asked us to stand with him against Charles Barron. He told us how dangerous Charles Barron was. In all the words that we use today, this is what Ed Towns said to us. Now, if over the last 2 years, Charles Barron has repented, I missed it. Like, where was I? Where were we? You didn't notice. So, you know, Ed Towns, we're following what Ed Towns told us 4 years ago. We went out and we worked, all of us, every single one of us here, worked to make sure that Charles Barron would not be in Congress 4 years ago. So if I thought for one moment that Towns did this on principle, it would be different. I don't think anyone accuses Towns of endorsing Barron on principle. Unfortunately. That's why we politicians sometimes get a rap that we get. This is politics, and it's worse than
I think the Assemblyman has a very important point, which is when we're talking about specifically one of the reasons we're doing it, and one of the reasons we're actually discussing this is because I think the media is very focused on the politics. It's very easy to focus on the politics. It's very easy to forget about the substance in terms of the actual candidates in this race. I think the media blew up Ed Towns, made an endorsement, but ignored, in our opinion, the fact that this individual, Charles Barron, is an individual who has a long track record of hatred and hate-mongering and bigotry and anti-Semitism. And so we're really here today to set the record straight and to make sure that everybody knows who Charles Barron is so they can make an educated decision when they go to vote in a few weeks from now.
Not to drive back to politics, but we're on the elected officials here endorsing Mr. Jeffries. Will all you be helping Mr. Jeffries going forward? And they ask in what ways? Like, how will you be going over your office?
We'll be doing everything. We'll be coordinating with the campaign, doing everything that we can in coordination with the campaign. Whenever they think it's most useful.
Thank you, Chief World, for covering this very important press conference. I would say that people need to know there's a critical election that's happening on June 26th. It's 2 weeks from tomorrow. There's a very clear choice. If you stay at home, I want to be clear about this. If you live in the district, if you live in Marine Park, Mill Basin, if you live in Brighton Beach, if you live in Coney Island, if you live in any part of this neighborhood, including Manhattan Beach, and you stay home, you will be responsible if Charles Barron gets elected the next day to Congress and becomes a congressional anti-Semite. And so this is a critical election we just saw from the state Senate race. Literally a race that was won by 13 votes. Every single vote come out 2 weeks from this Tuesday and make sure that you go and vote against Charles Barron for United States Congress.